has one bill today. It's file item number 2, SB 1227. We'll start as a subcommittee, and as soon as we get a quorum, Senator, you know the drill. We'll interrupt you and come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I have before you SB 1227, which would provide license relief for live racing fairs by eliminating a 1% license fee paid to the California Department of Food and Agriculture. These funds would instead be split between purses and commissions. As a result of declining racing revenues and the need to attract larger fields, the live racing fairs are in need of the license fee relief provided in this measure. The bill is supported by the Los Angeles County Fair and the Big Fresno Fair, and I have with me 2 witnesses to testify on the behalf of the bill. I actually only have one right now because the other one ran down to public safety.
Oh, okay.
I guess that leaves me. I'm Anthony Gonsalves, representing the LA County Fair.
It's about 5 or 6 of y'all, isn't it? So that.
Yeah, well, it's the Gonsalves.
Yeah, so. There you go. So, all right. So
you get more than one always.
There you go.
We are in support of the bill. This is very necessary for us to be able to get a full field of horses, to be able to use these funds to put back in the racing to help support the fairs and racing. Appreciate your support. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the panel? Members, you might recall a couple of years ago, this kind of continues in a process that we started. We used to take more out and send more funds to the fairs. The horse racing handle has been going down. This is an effort again to try to keep some of our horse racing business in place. So it's not a new phenomenon, but we're again trying to make sure that we preserve that. The horse racing business at some of our fairs is actually somewhat lucrative, and it keeps some of them going, certainly in Los Angeles. We have one, there's one certainly here at Cal Expo and in Fresno. The horse racing business at the fairs is a significant part of what they do, and this is a continuation of trying to preserve that. And that's my filibuster, as I was trying to get a quorum, Madam Chair. I could do the Gettysburg Address, which was actually fairly brief as well, but I'll hold off. Any other questions from the panel? See, usually you would have a whole bunch of stuff to say, and that.
If you do the Gettysburg Address with Emory, you won't do it justice.
And 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this country a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated anyway, so that all men were created equal. So, and then I've actually been to Gettysburg. It's actually.
Here comes my other witness.
Okay. Louis, man, you holding us up.
Come on, Louis. Quit horsing around.
Louis, be careful. I think this is about Cow Palace, so be careful.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown on behalf of the California Authority of Racing Fairs. We're the sponsor of the bill and in support. I know there's some concern about how transitioning this money back to racing fairs.
Louis, you making problems you didn't have.
Yeah,
right?
you didn't have.
I asked for an aye vote. Thank you.
I was going to go.
Whatever Anthony says.
Well, the chair did a very good description of what the bill does and what it's for.
Yeah, we were doing good. In fact, why don't you go back to public safety? Is that where you were? Just okay.
Mr. Chair, since this is a subcommittee, I'll go ahead and close. Okay. I would ask for your aye vote. This is really necessary to keep our fairs in order and keep moving along.
Okay. Well, as soon as we get one more member, we will take this up and put it up for a vote.
Yes, and I ask for your consideration on an aye vote. Thank you very much.
Who becomes
Wright. Here. Wright present. Anderson. Berryhill. Here. Berryhill present. Calderon. Canella. Corbett.
Here.
Corbett present. De Leon. Evans. Hernandez. Hernandez present. Padilla.
Here.
Padilla present. Walters. Wyland. Here. Wyland present. Yee. Yee present.
Mr. Chair, would you like a motion on SB 1227?
27, call the roll.
Motion is due pass and re-refer to appropriations. Wright.
Aye.
Wright, aye. Anderson. Berryhill. Berryhill, aye. Calderon. Canella.
Aye.
Canella, aye. Corbett.
Aye.
Corbett, aye. De Leon.
Aye.
De Leon, aye. Evans. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Padilla. Padilla, aye. Walters. Wyland. Wyland, aye. Yee. Yee, aye. Currently has 9 votes.
9, we'll hold that on call. There are a couple of people who may be coming. I'm not sure who becomes the vice chair as I'm presenting a bill. Well, don't leave too soon. So we might.
It's a chance to assume authority.
I got a bill.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hold the roll open for you.
Please, Mr. Wright, proceed. Somebody's got to take charge here.
Thank you, members. Mr. President, members, this is a simple bill, and I'm sure we've all heard that before. What this does in the regulatory framework, a number of our small businesses have complained that regulatory agencies put out regulations kind of sort of on no particular schedule. So you could get a regulation that comes out in January from one agency, you could get a regulation in February, you could get a regulation in March. What this says is that we would have regulation release days. So you release it in January, you release it in July. And so particularly for small business, large businesses have the ability to have a whole regulatory staff, and they can watch the regs as they're produced every day. That's a very expensive process for smaller businesses. So what this would say is that those regulations would come out twice a year. Now, in case there was something, I know there was a concern about whether or not a regulation was an emergency. There is already in statute an emergency provision. This does not impact that. So if there was something taking place that adversely impacted public safety or a worker for some reason, that agency could declare that it's an emergency and it would be released. The other portion of the bill is that the regulations would be posted on the website of the agency. Again, small businesses don't have the ability to necessarily have a regulatory department if it's a small business. And so what we're trying to do is give them a little bit of certainty going forward. So they would know that in July and in January, they need to check the regs. The regs would be on the website, so they would know that they're able to do that. It doesn't change the ability of the regulatory agency to issue the regs, and it does allow them, if necessary, to say that it's an emergency regulation, and they can enact that one immediately, so it doesn't stop them from being able to do an emergency regulation. I have a number of witnesses in support from small business and the chamber, and I'll shut up and let them present on that.
Good morning, Chair and Senators. Ken DeVore on behalf of the National Federation of Independent Business, and I've also been asked to speak on behalf of the California Asian Pacific Chamber of Commerce, who are their representatives currently in China. So they're co-sponsors of the bill, as is CSBA and Small Business California. We really want to thank the Senator for introducing this bill. We think that this is such a small but meaningful fix in California to help foster a pro-business climate. There are 3.6 million small businesses in California. They account for over 98% of all the businesses in the state. And most of them, the average small business has 3 to 5 employees, and they don't have a legal team to monitor regulations, which are getting more and more complex as time goes by. And as the elected representatives of the people, you represent almost 1 million people, yet your laws go into effect once a year. Agencies, on the other hand, can promulgate regulations all year long. And this bill doesn't seek to stop their ability to promulgate whatever regulations they feel are important. It just says, it sets 2 dates a year on which the regulations will go into effect so that small businesses are better able to comply. And they can see what's coming, they can predict, they can project, they can budget for it, and we can catch any conflicting regulations that are coming down the pipe a little bit easier. And we believe it'll actually lead to greater compliance. It'll lead to a lot more healthier economy in California. It does not, as the senator stated, it does not change an agency's ability to pass something that they deem is in the immediate need. It's in the best interests of health and welfare, immediate health and welfare needs of the state. It also doesn't impact the legislature's ability to set a regulation, a date for a regulation. Doesn't impact that at all. And so we think it's a very simple measure. We know there are oftentimes a lot of building contracting issues where different agencies have purview over a project, and one will promulgate a regulation in the middle of the project, and you have to start over because now you have to accommodate the new rule. But this would allow for this really happens in the instance of public contracts a lot. So we think it's a small but very meaningful reform. We ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Senators. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors of California in support of SB 1099. I think if you look at this in the framework of every year, the last 2 weeks of December, there is a series of articles that come out in newspapers across the state talking about the new laws that will go into effect that a business has to comply with starting January 1. This does the same thing for regulations, except it says we're going to do it twice a year. We're going to tell you in January, and we're going to tell you on July 1. But again, you will start having, I believe, the positive impact of this bill will be is that those articles will still occur in December, but now we're going to get them in June saying, look out, everybody, this is change. This is the new way that you're going to need to comply with it, and it gives a very reasonable heads up to the process. For that reason, we're in strong support of the bill and ask for your aye vote.
Good morning, Senators. John Hanley with the California Independent Grocers Association, also in strong support of the bill.
Good morning, members. Lori Kammerer, Small Business California, Coalition of Small and Disabled Veteran Businesses. I also have special permission by Aubrey Stone, President excuse me, of the California Black Chambers Association, who was unable to be here to testify this morning, to testify in strong support of SB 1099. This is a bill for business by small business, the small companies who don't have HR departments. As Ken had indicated, we don't have legal departments, et cetera. We are faced with a barrage of regulations throughout the year, new laws, hard to keep track of. We would really support a streamlined, transparent timing of the regulations so that employers do, in fact, have the time to prepare for what will be coming. We strongly support the bill. Thanks.
Ian Padilla with the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. To successfully build schools in California requires approval of many state agencies who approve regulations on many different timelines, as been outlined here, and so that creates a lot of confusion at the local level for local districts. So we believe that this bill provides some certainty, and so we strongly urge you your aye vote. Thank you.
Mike Kroge with California Manufacturers and Technology Association in support.
Mr. Chair, members, Tim Shestak on behalf of the American Chemistry Council, also in support. Thank you.
Apparently, Senator Berryhill also has to leave, so I admit. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation. I do apologize to the author for our late opposition. We're opposed principally because we work very hard to get regulations enacted to protect worker health and safety. In some cases, this takes many years of our members and our unions coming forward to talk about conditions in a particular industry and how it's impacting the workers. And every day that goes by where those regulations are not enacted to protect workers, workers are at risk and are being injured. And so for us to put in to only have the regulations take effect twice a year potentially creates up to 6 months delay, even once there's a recognition that these regulations are very important and do need to be enacted to protect workers. And so that is the principal reason for our opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Deanna Furman on behalf of the California Nurses Association. We too apologize for the late nature of our opposition. We are also opposed. Currently, we have legislation that's presently moving through the regulatory process in Cal OSHA associated with our lift team legislation. We feel that the current process is very long and arduous already. We think that it'll be the end of the year when these regulations go into effect, and we think that the current system is suitable and it should be upheld, and that this legislation is not necessary, and therefore we oppose.
Members of the committee, Lee Sandall on behalf of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union. And we are speaking in opposition today on this piece of legislation. We feel that the extended regulation time of nearly 5 months unfairly jeopardizes the safety of workers.
Questions from members? Senator Corbett.
Thank you very much. Senator Wright, a couple questions. You referred to a law on the books that allows for expedited regulations. I don't see anything in the analysis on that.
On page 2 of the bill, on line 22, the agency makes a written request to the Office of Administrative Law demonstrating good cause for an earlier effective date in which the case, the office may prescribe an earlier date. That's actually existing law that we didn't change. So this does not trump what is existing law. So if the agency felt that it needed, for example, if there was a worker safety issue, that agency would simply say we need to move this forward and implement it at a date certain. So this does not preclude the agency from doing that. But if, many of the regulations that we enact don't have such an emergency provision, so this would not apply to those. But if there was a worker safety issue, that agency would simply say we need to have an earlier date, and there would be nothing in this law that would preclude that from taking place.
Is anyone from the Office of Administrative Law here today that we can ask questions of?
I have no idea.
Okay. Did you discuss this bill with them? Do we know if they have any concerns? Could this create a bottleneck for them? We hear all the time that because we're asking our agencies to do more with less, that sometimes they're not able to meet deadlines. Did we take a look to see if there's any concern about that?
Was mirror existing law. The part that I read to you is already what they do.
No, I'm talking about your part of the bill that requires that these laws be enacted on 2 specific dates. So I'm just wondering if that's going to create any bottleneck situation.
Senator, if I may answer. I reached out to them on multiple occasions, and we played phone tag and had a short chat. They didn't say that there were any concerns at the time. Current law already requires the Office of Administrative Law to post all new regulations once they're filed with the Secretary of State's office. This just changes the time frame of when they post them, but the current law already requires all regs to be posted by them. It just groups it more together, so it doesn't change what their job is. It just changes the timing of it.
Okay, but we don't know if it would cause any concern to them, really.
We don't know. They haven't expressed anything,
okay.
Senator.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the notice process?
I'm sorry?
Could you tell us a little bit about the notice process? Your concern in the bill is that people don't have the opportunity to be ready for these regulations as they come down, so you want to have set dates.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about the notice process so we can understand what sort of information small businesses have.
Sure, Senator. Currently, under current law, most agencies, there are some exceptions, but most agencies, they draft regs. There is a process in place for drafting regulations. Yes. It requires public input. Yes. And such. And then once they've finished their product, it goes to the Secretary of State's office, where it has to sit for 30 days, and then then it has force of law. It's implemented. But they can do that throughout the year, all year long. And so what we're trying to do here is just say that they can still do all the regs they need, but there will just be 2 days a year instead of one. You know, a small business will find out that an agency just passed a regulation, that one just went into effect 2 weeks ago, and now they're out of compliance. And then another one's about to go into effect from a different agency in 3 weeks, and then another one a month later. And there were hundreds and hundreds of regs that were passed last year, and it results in a lot of confusion and a lot of non-compliance because they don't even know that they're out of compliance. This is one more tool to allow small businesses to a place where they can go and see the list of regs that are coming down the pike as what is going to take effect, as opposed to what has taken effect. So it gives them a chance to prepare ahead of time rather than find out after the fact.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other members, questions, comments? I'd like to make a comment. I think this is a good bill, and here's why. And I'm a little mystified at the opposition. If I understand you correctly, Senator Wright, there is a mechanism for the agency if there is an immediate need based on health and welfare which would be through the OAL, and that's hence Senator Corbett's question. It seems to me that if you take that off the table, which was the concern that I heard, what you're doing is helping not only those businesses that by every single economist across the board in the country says are the job generators. And I can tell you from personal experience that a lot of those businesses are businesses that are more reluctant to let people go when times are tough, not only because, well, for several reasons, but one of which is a lot of small businesses have very personal relationships with the people they employ, as opposed to larger businesses. And there are lots of other reasons that we don't need to go into now. So I think this is a good bill. It doesn't change another fact, which is that even if there's a time certain for imposition of a regulation, it's small businesses that often can't do it. And I've heard people from very large companies acknowledge this. They simply don't have the ability to do it. So this helps them a little bit. I think it generates and retains jobs, and if we've ever needed it, now's the time. Do I hear a motion? I'll move the bill's been moved.
Motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Environmental Quality. Right?
Let me.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
We need to close.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate the discussion, and thank you, members, for the time. Again, I think one of the witnesses here today who was talking about school construction laid out part of what could be the problem. You start a project, and then 2 months into it, there's a regulation that changes that might alter the cost of your project by thousands of dollars that you hadn't budgeted. And then 2 more months in, there's another regulation that alters it by thousands of dollars. I'm not trying to stop the process of the regulation. The idea is that there should be some certainty going forward, that you know that for a 6-month period of time, that absent there being something that deals with safety or any other thing, and let me make clear, the regulation relative to immediate implementation is not being affected. So if an agency deems that its rule needs to go into effect today, then it makes that declaration and they file that. This doesn't preclude that. But what you don't want is a small business person, unlike a larger business person that has people who monitor agencies all the time. In a school construction project, there might be 10 different agencies that could pass a regulation that would have an impact on that project. You could be in a small manufacturing business. I've got a number of metal finishers that operate in my district. They too have, in one case, one guy has 27 different agencies that monitor what he does. They're not all state agencies. Some of them are county, some of them are federal. But in this small industry where he makes ball bearings that go into precision instruments for rockets and aerospace industry stuff, it's a very precision equipment that actually was born in Southern California. The change of regulations adversely affects them. And so what many of these guys have done is said, you know, I'm just out of here because I can go someplace else where there's at least a little bit more certainty. This doesn't change the environment that they play in. It doesn't let them do something that's adversely affecting the environment. If we conclude that they're doing something that's environmentally insensitive, that's an emergency and you stop it. This doesn't change that. But what it does do is it says that that business ought to know, at least to some degree of certainty, that within a 6-month period, if there's going to be a major change in the way his business has to be conducted, that he would get that information on a regular basis and he could account for that as best he could. Worker safety should not be an issue because that would be an emergency and that regulation would take place immediately. I would ask for your aye vote.
Wright.
Aye.
Wright, aye. Anderson. Berryhill.
Aye.
Berryhill, aye. Calderon.
Aye.
Calderon, aye. Canella.
Aye.
Canella, aye. Corbett. De Leon. De Leon, aye. Evans. Hernandez.
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, aye. Walters. Wyland.
Aye.
Wyland, aye. Yee. Yee, aye.
Corbett, no.
Corbett, no. 9-1. Yeah, it's still open. Item number 2, the current vote is 9-0. Absent members Anderson, Calderon, Calderon, aye. Evans, Walters. That's 10-0. Just our 3 absent members are off both Anderson, Evans, and Walters.
Okay, why don't we close? I don't think they're coming. So why don't we announce the votes?
So item number 1, SB 1099. That bill passes 9-1. And item 2, SB 1227, passes 10-0.
Okay, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.